There exists a language older than any spoken tongue, a code not taught but remembered, faintly, like a dream just out of reach. This is the language of sigils. Before alphabets carved the world into logic, before empires etched their laws into stone, our ancestors whispered to the unseen through symbols, mysterious, charged, and alive. A sigil is not merely a drawing. It is a spell sealed in shape, a desire disguised in a form so simple it slips past the guards of the conscious mind and roots itself in the fertile soil of the unconscious. It is here, in this hidden garden of the soul, that real magic begins. To those who have forgotten, sigils may appear as mere doodles, curious scribbles born of idle hands. But to those who remember, they are sacred keys. They do not speak in words but in vibrations, in a resonance that echoes through time and psyche, unlocking doors we didn't know were closed. Like lost relics from a time when magic walked beside man, sigils carry within them the pulse of ancient intentions, primal, pure, and potent. In an age drowning in noise, they invite us to return to something quieter, older, more intimate. Something that doesn't ask us to believe, only to remember. That the universe still listens, that the soul still speaks, and that within a single symbol, drawn with clarity and heart, lies the power to shift the currents of fate. To embrace sigils is to reclaim a birthright, the forgotten language of the soul. Long before the printing press inked its first word, long before science claimed the stars, there were symbols, carved in a stone, pressed into wax, painted on his skin, carrying power far greater than ink or parchment ever could. These were the seals of the ancients, the precursors to what we now call sigils. They were not ornamental. They were instruments of will. Every line, every curve held intention, protection, knowledge, love, wrath, or peace, etched by mystics and magicians who understood that the universe did not respond to noise, but to meaning. The legendary seals of Solomon, for instance, weathered grimoires, now locked in glass cases or hidden in private collections. You'll find pages upon pages of intricate designs meant to commune with what lies beyond. These symbols were more than decoration. They were bridges between the visible and invisible, the mortal and divine. But time passed, the sacred was buried beneath skepticism, and the language of symbols fell silent, or so we believed. Yet sigils endure. They evolve, like quiet echoes from an enchanted past. They call out through forgotten pages and flickering candles, through corporate logos and curious dreams. Each one a fragment of a spell cast by those who remembered how to speak to the world not with words, whispering that magic was never lost, only hidden, waiting to be rediscovered by those who dare to remember. In the dim glow of gaslit London, as the 20th century crept in on silent feet, while others clung to grand rituals and cloaked societies, Spare dared to strip magic down to its essence, the mind. He did not seek gods in the stars, but in the folds of the human psyche. For Spare, the true altar was the unconscious, and the sigil was the flame upon it. Where medieval magicians summoned spirits with blood and incense, Spare drew a single line and whispered it into the dark. He believed that to manifest desire, one must first bury it deep enough that the conscious mind forgets, but the soul remembers. In this way, sigils became vessels of hidden will, crafted not to impress the eye, but to impress upon the spirit. Spare called it atavistic resurgence, a return to primal awareness, a waking of forgotten instincts that once guided man through mystery and moonlight. His work was not just art, but inner alchemy, transforming thought into symbol and symbol into action. He offered no dogma, only a mirror. Look into yourself, draw what you find, and let the universe finish the sentence. In a world obsessed with outer control, Spare whispered of inner power, not as an ancient relic, but as a living spell for the modern soul. There are places within us untouched by logic, secret chambers of the mind where words cannot go, but symbols can. This is where sigils live, not as mere drawings but as keys, unlocking inner doors long sealed by reason. In the waking world, we speak in sentences, but in dreams, in visions. In the quiet pull of intuition, we speak in symbols. A single shape can ripple through the psyche, stirring emotion, memory, and meaning that no paragraph ever could. That is the true magic of sigils. They bypass the rigid centuries of logic and slip through the gates of the unconscious like whispers in candlelight. Where the conscious mind hesitates, questions, and doubts, the unconscious simply receives. It knows. It remembers. Symbols are its language, the native tongue of the soul, and sigils are its most intimate dialect. To work with sigils is not just to cast spells, but to remember how to feel in a world that tells you only to think. It is to let a curve speak where a sentence fails. It is to allow mystery to move within you, unchained by proof or explanation. Like ancient cave paintings or forgotten glyphs on temple walls, a sigil resonates not because you understand it, but because it understands you. You do not need to explain the sun to feel its warmth. In the same way, you do not need to decode a sigil to be moved by it. You only need to see it, and something stirs, something shifts, something ancient wakes. This is the hidden power of symbols. They do not ask for permission. They enter through the side door of the soul and begin to change you from within. To create a sigil is to perform a quiet act of alchemy, not with fire or metal, but with thought and will. It begins not with ink, but with intention. You do not simply wish, you declare. Not I want, but I am. You shape your desire like a sculptor shaping clay, stripping it of fear, doubt, and vagueness, until only truth remains, pure, clear, unwavering. Then, with ancient hands reborn through your own, you break that truth apart. Letters fall like leaves. Vowels vanish. Duplicates dissolve. What remains is the marrow of meaning, the essential bones of your will. And from those bones, you begin to build. You draw, you twist, you curve. You let your fingers move like you're remembering something you never learned. The lines are not for others to read. They are for the universe to feel. And as the symbol takes form, something happens. Your thoughts begin to quiet, and your heart begins to speak. The sigil becomes a mirror of your desire, a visual spell cast not through ritual, but through resonance. You're no longer just writing. You are encoding, infusing, charging. As you focus, the sigil drinks in your energy, your emotion, your essence. It becomes alive, not in the way a flame dances, but in the way a seed waits. It holds the weight of your will in silence. And when it is finished, truly finished, you release it. Let it go. Bury it, burn it, forget it. For a sigil is not a chain to hold your longing. It is a message sent to the unseen, a silent envoy bearing your truth into the fabric of reality. And like all great magic, its power lies not only in the drawing, but in the letting go. The moment your sigil is complete, it hums with silent potential, like a storm beneath still water. But its creation is only half the spell. To awaken it, you must charge it, not with candles or incantations unless you wish, but with feeling. Real, trembling, electric feeling. Joy, lust, awe, rage, any state where the self dissolves and raw energy floods in. That is the fire in which sigils are forged. Some dance until they forget their names. Others meditate until thought dissolves. Some laugh, cry, scream, because the universe does not listen to what you say. It listens to what you feel. You take that emotional current and press it into the sigil like breath into a flame. And then, just when it begins to feel sacred, you let it go. That is the paradox. The more you want it, the more you must release it. Burn it to ash. Bury it beneath a tree. Tear it up and scatter it in the wind. Or if you're bold, simply forget it. The act of release is the final ritual and the most powerful one, because magic, like love, cannot bloom in captivity. When you detach from the outcome, you open space for it to move. You send your desire into the wilds of creation, no longer as a plea, but as a truth waiting to return. And from that moment on, the sigil begins its quiet work, in shadows and synchronicities, in sudden chances and inner shifts. You may not see it coming. You may not even remember what it was for. But one day, you'll feel it, subtle, seamless, sacred, as if the universe itself breathed your desire back into form. That is the power of the letting go, the final leap of trust, the true magician's grace. Look closer. The world is laced with sigils, though no one calls them that anymore. Gone are the robes and ritual circles, replaced instead by glowing screens and branded signs. But the magic? It never left. It simply changed clothes. Walk through a city street and you'll see them, shining from storefronts, glowing on phone screens, stitched into shoes and stamped onto coffee cups. Logos, we call them. Symbols of identity, power, desire. But look deeper and you'll recognize the same ancient mechanics at play. Intention distilled into form, emotion anchored in shape. The Nike swoosh doesn't just say sportswear. It whispers of motion, ambition, victory. Apple's bitten fruit is more than sleek design. It hints at forbidden knowledge, creativity, and rebellion. Even McDonald's arches curve like a cradle, triggering comfort, nostalgia, and hunger all in one glance. These are modern sigils, crafted by corporate magicians who understand something many have forgotten. Symbols bypass logic. They go straight to the soul. We're not persuaded. We are moved. And this too is magic. The same magic practiced by temple scribes and Renaissance alchemists now lives in marketing agencies and design firms. But not all is commercial. Some wear sigils inked into skin, tattoos as talismans. Others sketch them in journals or hide them in art, anchoring private truths in public form. Wherever symbols are charged with intent and emotion, the ancient ritual lives on. You may not recognize it, but your subconscious does. It always has, for though the world grows louder, the language of symbols still speaks in silence. It reminds us that the sacred is not gone. It's simply hidden in plain sight, waiting to be seen again by those with eyes not just to look, but to remember. Across deserts and mountains, through temples and cathedrals, on cave walls and canvas, humanity has drawn the same shapes again and again. Spirals, stars, eyes, circles within circles. Civilizations that never touched, separated by oceans and centuries, somehow spoke the same silent language. How? Why? It is as if something deeper than culture calls us to symbols, something timeless, ancient, shared. Sigils are echoes of that truth. They are not just magical tools or aesthetic flourishes. They are fragments of a universal code, an invisible thread woven through all of us, whispering that beneath our differences lies a common soul. You don't need to speak Latin, read tarot, or study arcane texts to understand this. You feel it in the shiver when you see a symbol that means something, even if you can't explain it. In the way a mandala pulls you into stillness, or how a carved emblem seems to vibrate with memory. This is the true gift of sigils. They transcend language, time, and geography. They reach into the collective unconscious, the great reservoir where all myths are born and all dreams return. They remind us that magic is not an exotic force reserved for the few, but an ancient birthright carried by all. Every sigil drawn in earnest is a declaration. I remember. I remember the time before forgetting. I remember the power of intention. I remember that I am not separate from the universe, but in dialogue with it. So when you next trace a symbol with trembling hand or see one glowing in the corner of your day, pause. Feel. Listen. You are not alone. You are not lost. You are speaking the oldest language the world has ever known. Sigils are more than symbols. They are echoes of something eternal. From ancient seals to modern logos, from the silent language of the unconscious to the personal ritual of creation, they remind us that magic is not lost, only hidden in plain sight. Each sigil is a bridge between thought and form, self and cosmos, memory and mystery. In crafting them, Charging them and releasing them, we awaken the Creator within. And in recognizing their presence all around us, we begin to remember a forgotten truth. The universe has always listened to symbols, and it still listens to us.